My story, my connection with St Vincent's Private Hospital goes back almost 50 years. I was a Sister of Charity, professed in January, and came down to Potts Point and did 12 months theology. And following that 12 months theology, I was missioned to be in charge of the top floor of St Vincent's Private Hospital, Sydney. Now in those days, St Vincent's was on Victoria Street, as it is today. It was 3 stories. The other unique thing about St Vincent's Private Hospital was it was staffed by registered nurses, and that was such a blessing for me. My name in those days was Sister Barnabas. So the registered nurses very soon called me Barney. Sister Bernice called me aside and she said she was very concerned because she had heard that the registered nurses were calling me Barney instead of Sister Barnabas. So I had to gather the registered nurses together and say to them that nicknames weren't appropriate. And they just said, Barney, we can't call you anything else. So that was my story. But the wonderful thing about those few years that I spent at St Vincent's Private was the sharing with the patients, with the families, the sharing of where healthcare was at that time and how private healthcare was at that time. And it was very much for people who could afford being in the private hospital. And you may know that the reason that the Sisters of Charity commenced private hospitals, and I think St Vincent's Private Hospital was the first one in Australia, was so that the doctors who worked gratis in the public hospital and long hours would be able to have private patients so that they could have some money that would enable them to meet the needs of the times, develop themselves, go overseas, learn more in medicine and in nursing. So the sisters found that that was really why they built a private hospital. A lot of people were very critical of us having a private hospital in light of our whole 4th vow that we take about service of the poor. But as you and I know very well, that poverty is not only about not having the finances to support you. Mary Aikenhead always saw poverty as respect and dignity for the individual. And when people come into hospital, that's what they yearn for.